Hello and welcome to the 199th episode of Ask M&R Productions, a series where I answer your questions. If you have a question for next week's episode, you could leave in the comments section below, but next week's episode is the special 200th edition of Ask M&R Productions, and you can send in a video submission of you asking a question to the email askmnr200@gmail.com. Now, if you're doing this, I do ask that you also write your question either as the subject line of the email or within the body of the email in addition to attaching your video file in the email. That'll just make it a little bit easier for me and hopefully ensure that the video still comes out on time next Tuesday. And while I would prefer it's people showing themselves asking their questions, if you're not comfortable on camera, maybe show part of your Lego collection while asking the question or something like that. So just an idea there for you. Let's get into it with our first question from CT7567. He says, how much of a role does Disney have deciding the lineup of Lego Star Wars waves? I would wager not a ton. I mean, they definitely are going to have some input and some like, hey, you should probably do this. Like when we see things released like a Slave One, a Mandalorian fighter, an Imperial shuttle, this is, clearly something where Disney is going ahead of time being like, hey, it'd be cool if you had an Imperial shuttle out in the January 2021 wave because, hey, maybe it'll show up in December of 2020 just before that set comes out. And while the minifigs might not be the minifigs that you want there, the ship is still there, and it just showed up in a new episode of The Mandalorian. So I think there's some of that. I highly doubt it is ever like, hold them down and force them to design something they don't want to design. But it's got to be very little because, you can look around the room and see what other companies are doing. It seems to be a pretty free world as far as what Star Wars products you want to make. I mean, of course, they probably contractually have to make stuff and would obviously want to make stuff on the latest media, but outside of that, most companies seem pretty free to delve into what they want, including non-canon stuff like the 2003 Clone Wars with Hasbro, which we've talked about obviously in some recent weeks. The best story here, and this pertains to new media, so I think with old media it's even more free than this, but when the Rogue One wave was being decided, there were the 5 sets that came out there. The biggest set of the wave was originally Disney wanted them to do the big Zeta class cargo shuttle, and Lego was like, no, we think we want to do Director Krennic's shuttle, and so Disney was persuaded or just allowed them to do that instead. So I have never seen Disney as the puppeteer above Lego. It's a partnership. Aiden E says, as someone who has very little display space, when I'm done with a set and want to make room for a new one, I carefully deconstruct the set by starting from the end of the instructions and working my way to the front, putting all the pieces in the originally numbered bags. That way, I get the exact building experience when I want to build it again. And, I congratulate you on your individuality and also being a psychopath. Tyler says, what are your thoughts on the possibility and appeal of a UCS Jabba sail barge? I think this is something that's coming. I don't know when, much like a UCS AT-AT was obviously something that was eventually going to happen. A big Jabba sail barge, I would more liken it, they probably wouldn't call it UCS, much like they didn't call the big Tantive that came out for $200 UCS, but it would be a big Master Builder Series-esque, or just big playset, basically, for a Jabba sail barge. And I could see it, I don't know the exact scale, but there is a potential there that you can end up in a pretty close to perfect minifig scale, much like with the UCS AT-AT. Stuff like that doesn't make sense for things like a Star Destroyer, where it would be the size of a city block if it were minifig scale. But like, with stuff like this, it's actually possible, and it's a really exciting prospect because they did it with Hasbro, and they did a $350 through HasLab, which is essentially the Hasbro version of Lego Ideas. But this thing is $500. It's not cheap, and it is sized with their, I think, 3.75 inch figures, which I don't personally collect. I only do the Black Series, so these are the smaller ones. But I mean, this thing is massive, so I think there is clearly a market for this if Hasbro is making one for $500. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I could, given something, it could happen next summer, especially if that $500 price range, or next summer, late summer, the big set for next year could be a big Jabba sail barge. I still think it's an Endor, but Jabba sail barge is very much on the table, and who knows? Darth Frame Drop says, is it worth it to buy the 2013 AT-AT on Bricklink now and risk a new one possibly coming out in the next couple years, or should I keep waiting? Also, you're super cool. Bye. Oh, thank you. So here's the problem. This is like a problem that you see in technology spaces a lot. It's, should I buy the new iPhone, or should I wait for the next one? Because the reality is, the next one will always be better. That same sentiment can't quite be said for Lego sets. Time and time again, we have seen sometimes a new Lego set comes out, and it is a massive improvement upon the previous version. That 2018 X-Wing versus the 2012 X-Wing. The 2012 X-Wing is already good, much like the 2013 AT-AT is already good. And then they came out with the 2018 X-Wing, which was just so perfect. And then if they come out with a new AT-AT, how do you know the new AT-AT isn't going to be a rinky-dink little AT-AT that sucks, or is it going to be the equivalent of that 2018 X-Wing that's amazing? It's impossible to know. On top of that, you just don't know if one's coming out. It's kind of not the same as technology, though. Like with iPhones, like every year you know a new iPhone's coming out. A new AT-AT could come out next year. It could come out 5 years from now. It could be 10 years from now. It could be, hypothetically, never. Unlikely, but certainly possible. So my advice in general with these types of like situations for yourself is, if you're looking at an old retired set and you think, hey, maybe one's coming out soon, either set a date for yourself. So say summer 2021. Are we in? Oh, no. Next year's 2022. So let's say, you know, you set your date at summer 2022. If they don't release one by August 1st, 2022, you say, to hell with this, I'm going to buy the old one. Like, you set that for yourself. Or you can say, I'm going to buy it now because it's the one I love. And if they release an even better one, I'm okay with that, and I could possibly sell the one I bought and buy the new one, or just be okay and just like the one that I have, and, you know, whatever your deal with that is. Next up from Obi-Wan Kenobi says, recently discovered about the whole Resistance Bomber change with the Finch Dallow minifigs. I think it's pretty interesting that they changed the set due to a character that barely had any screen time and not many people know, which led to him being over $600 on the aftermarket. What are your thoughts on it, and why do you think they haven't done the same with the Gunship? So I think the Gunship is a slightly different situation than Finch Dallow. Finch Dallow was a figure that they felt apparently so strongly should be accurately represented in the set that they went out of their way to replace him when the Resistance Bomber was nearly end of life. I never personally saw a Resistance Bomber with Finch Dallow on my store shelves. The set had already been clearanced out at that point, which makes it absurd to me that they went in and changed that figure and completely refused to actually make things that I felt were more important, with like a burnt Obi-Wan and Anakin in some of the summer 2020 sets. And there are obviously other examples of figures that LEGO really should have gone in and fixed, unlike Finch Dallow, which was unimportant, and literally nobody ever brought up the fact that LEGO should change this. But when they did all of that, they made this whole spiel about how it had to be perfect and how it was very important that they had the right character to them and that it was like accurately represented. And like I drank that Kool-Aid. I was like, oh my god, this is the best. They're fixing their mistakes. And this is like early 2020 maybe, maybe late 2019 probably. I drank that Kool-Aid real good, and that has certainly flipped for me. Definitely don't believe a word that comes out of their mouth a lot of the time now because of stuff like that, where they'll sit there and tell you one thing and then do the complete opposite a year later. Thinking back on the Finch Dallow situation makes it even funnier to me when you read the Gunship quotes that sound like this. Let's be honest, all most people remember from the movies is that there was a clone trooper with some yellow markings on the helmet piloting the vehicle. What does it matter? It was a Resistance Bomber guy. That's all people remembered from the movies. They didn't remember Finch Dallow, so why was it so important to go in and change it, right? Now, I think it is more important to change it in the Gunship. They're not going to change it, but it is. And so there's that, right? That's a really good aspect that you bring up there, that obviously there's some very big hypocrisy there. And then to the point of it being $600. Now, the price of it is definitely decided by the market. It came in a $90 set. The availability of it, however, was a different question, with it not being very widely available. And like, when you have something that's only maybe produced with a couple thousand, maybe, I can't imagine there were a ton of Finch Dallows if they're going for $600. You're going to have some issues with things going up in value for anything that's LEGO Star Wars. And, you know, when the designers come out with the Gunship and say, we don't feel like they should be super rare collector's items, and then you have Finch Dallow that came out just a year or two prior, it's like, come on, like, clearly people want to collect these. Them being in the UCS Gunship doesn't make it a super rare collector's item. The UCS Gunship is mass produced, and by that singular fact, it is not super rare. It is expensive, but that's not to say figures that originally came in other UCS sets didn't later come in other sets. If Phase 2 Cody or Jedi Bob was in a Gunship, Jedi Bob would certainly almost be exclusive to the Gunship and not released in a later set. But Phase 2 Cody specifically, we originally, I looked to the UCS Falcon, designed by the same guy who did the Gunship, so this is a great example to give you. When the UCS Falcon came out, and there are other examples in this set and other sets that this same person has designed, but it came with exclusive Porgs at the time, which very quickly were worth like $75 to $100 each. Very, very expensive because they were only in the $800 set that was very hard to come by. And then, of course, Porgs have now come in many different sets and variations. And also, like, Commander Cody has been in other sets, so what's the holdup on putting him in different armor in this set? It's no different than having a different Boba Fett in the Cloud City set that the same guy designed, and that Boba Fett is worth $100 on Bricklink right now. I feel like I talk about this too much, but I also feel like a lot of other people are scared to talk about this sort of stuff, given their reliance on LEGO for certain things. But I'm also free to speak my opinion. If they don't share that opinion, whatever, but I think it's a pretty cut and dry situation here that LEGO really screwed up and refuses to admit. Didn't mean to get that deep into it, but that's just what happens. Moving on to Jake's question, he says, how do you afford LEGO, especially the large sets you can buy on release day? I make all my money from YouTube, pretty straightforward. I think if you look at like higher tier YouTubers that have millions and millions of subs, it's pretty obvious that like they have just copious amounts of money lying around. Now, I certainly want to be in this position where I can buy a house in all cash and all this stuff, you know, that's great and wonderful that I think a lot of people aspire to achieve in life. But I am, fortunately, in a position where I can at least walk in the LEGO store and buy $1,000 of LEGO sets on any given day. So, like, that's a great thing. That's a big difference in my life from 5 years ago. I definitely very much enjoy that. So, yeah, I mean, it's very simply I make money online, which is pretty incredible. I don't feel like it can be said enough how crazy it is that literally any of you can like start a YouTube channel tomorrow, and success is certainly not guaranteed, but you can work at it. You can try to learn different things and fill a niche that is not currently being filled, or do something unique and entertaining and garner an audience. And all of a sudden, some of the financial YouTube people like Graham Stephan and I forget the other guy's name, one of his friends, Andre Jick, that's his name. I wanted to get his name right. So the video he made is called Passive Income, How I Make $5,000 a Day. I think that sounds pretty great to anyone, and of course, it got me to click on the video. And while exactly how much I make on YouTube is not something I'm comfortable sharing at this point in my life, he shared that in February of this year, he made $122,000 in 1 month on YouTube. Just YouTube revenue. That's not including, maybe he has affiliate links, other deals with sponsors. I know everyone knows like invitation links. Like I did invitation links for Mercari and I made some money doing that, but he probably makes way more doing invitation links for things like Robinhood or Coinbase or whatever other Webull, different little, you know, brokerage things that people do their money on and whatever, and he gets, you know, a referral fee essentially. But he made $120,000 just on YouTube in 1 month. And I'm sitting here like, holy crap, how do I do that? I want to achieve that. That is just like the absurdity of YouTube. And I think that can help put things in perspective for a lot of people there. Like there is like just crazy echelons above where I am, where I can just afford some LEGO sets, where you make $120,000 in 1 month. Bro, like that's so much money. Like, so yeah, I see stuff like that and it motivates me. I don't know how other people see it, but like I look at that and I think that's a really cool thing, that it's incredible that I can just like make some videos and potentially make $120,000 in 1 month. Like, I don't know. That's just really cool to me. Another somewhat money-centric question here from Christian. He says, would you give up your career as a full-time YouTuber if given an offer to be a higher up working on LEGO Star Wars projects? The allure of YouTube, I think for a lot of people, myself included, is the unlimited potential. Like if I had completed college and gone into a 9-to-5 job and was working marketing, you know, you can certainly make a fine living, but there's somewhat of a cap to what you can make in different, you know, programs or positions, you know, doing marketing, and you know, $60,000 a year is what you make doing this, $100,000 a year is what you make doing this. But as I just showed, if you do YouTube stuff, your earnings potential is, I mean, I don't want to say unlimited because that's obviously not necessarily true, but it is much higher. I feel like I'm loyal enough where I always thought if I had become like a professional sports player, like I always want to be like a baseball player or something growing up, like play for the Red Sox, I would have taken significantly less money as a home team discount. Like if I was offered $10 million to go play baseball in Atlanta or $5 million to play in Boston, I mean, maybe I'm insane. Maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. But I feel like I would take the $5 million to play in Boston just because, like, why would I not want to play for the team that I love? This is a good hypothetical, but not something that would ever happen. Alex says, what, in your opinion, is the best version of the Snowspeeder to display alongside the UCS AT-AT for a potential Hoth display so that the relative scales don't look out of proportion? So we're going to wipe out the two UCS models, as good as the UCS models could look next to it. You're looking for something different, obviously. And I think there have been 6 different play scale Snowspeeders. We had the one very originally in 1999. We had the 2004 version, which is my, you know, heart of hearts favorite there. Love that. We had 2014, actually there's 7, 2014, 2019, those were all the standalone versions of the Snowspeeder. And then we had versions that came packed in with other sets, the 2007 Hoth Echo Base, the 2013 Hoth set, and then the 2016 UCS Hoth. I think those are all the play scale Snowspeeders. And the reality is with these, they're all basically the same size. They all use the same cockpit piece, which is what the scale of these is centered around. I mean, you could go for the juniors use one, but you'd be the idiot. But really, any of the versions from 2010 and onwards are going to look just fine. So if you already have one of those, you're going to be really well off. If not, I would recommend shelling out the $80 or so, maybe $90, to get a sealed 20th anniversary version. Open that up and put it next to your UCS AT-AT. You've probably got the money if you're paying $800 for the AT-AT, although I've certainly been in a position where I spent every penny for an $800 UCS set, so I get it if you don't. But yeah, if you can, definitely go for the newest version. A&T Reptiles and More says, as someone who's a fan of both, which would be the better purchase, the Titanic or UCS AT-AT? I think with either, you're going to be perfectly happy. I think they're both amazing sets, and they really do show what LEGO can be at their absolute peak. These are two of the best sets that have probably ever been released. They're also two of the most expensive sets, and so I don't think money should be an issue here. If you can afford one, you just pick the one you like more. I don't think you should pick based on which one you think is a slightly better value, because certainly one of these at the end of the day is probably a slightly better value, but like, I don't think that's a really great way to pick between LEGO sets. I think you should pick the one you like more. That being said, no matter which one you pick, I guarantee you will regret not buying the other at some point in your life. I know that in 2005, I went to Toys R Us, and they had all the Episode 3 sets, and I picked the ARC 170 instead of the Wookiee Attack set. And so for like literally, I was never able to own the Wookiee Attack set until like 2 years ago. So for literally like 13, 14 years, I just sat and stared at that set year after year, regretting not picking it over the ARC 170, and I know full well if I had picked it over the ARC 170, I'd be mad I didn't get the ARC 170. So there's really no winning in your situation, I would say. I mean, your win is getting an awesome LEGO set that you really want, obviously, but the loss is going to be, you're not going to have the other one, and you're always going to be looking and thinking like, oh, what if I had the Titanic, or what if I had the AT-AT instead? It's so much cooler, or whatever goes through your mind in situations like that. We have a very interesting one here from Edmund. He says, I think I'm about the same age as you, and I was recently asked by my parents, what would I plan to do with my collection when I'm old and frail and no longer interested in LEGO many decades down the line? I didn't know how to answer, but I eventually came down to the conclusion that I wanted to sell my sets to private collectors and then use all the proceeds to a charity of my choosing. FYI, I don't plan on doing this until I'm really old, so my question is, what are your end goals for your collection once you're physically incapable of enjoying them anymore? Any plans like giving them away in a charity or perhaps donate to a local museum? I really love what you're thinking here, Edmund. I think that's a really cool and like noble thing of you to do. I have no idea. I don't know what I'm eating for lunch tomorrow. So, that type of thing. But like, I don't know, realistically, I'll probably have grandchildren or whatever, and more than likely I'd be very happy to give them some of it. I at some point in my life, maybe 20 years down the line, I'm 45 years old, might say to hell with it, I'm done with all of this, sell it all and move to Alaska. I don't know. Like, life is long. There's a lot to do there. And so the idea that I might have these forever is certainly very possible. The idea that I might get rid of them in 20 years and use the money to do something for my own benefit is very likely as well. And certainly just as likely I could save it all and give some to grandchildren and use some of the money to give to a charity or something that I find to be beneficial for the betterment of humanity, like Team Trees or Team Seas is the new one. But I like that you're thinking about that. It's just not something I have given any thought and probably will give any thought for a long time to come. I don't see any reason for me to put any time into that right now, but it's really cool that you did. Jacob says, Black Friday is coming up. What kind of sales do you think LEGO is going to have? I want to get a few sets during the sale, and my budget is around 500 Canadian. What would you recommend I get? I would recommend looking elsewhere other than LEGO themselves. You say, what kind of sales do I think LEGO is going to have? LEGO themselves typically doesn't have great Black Friday sales. They just don't. Certainly give it a look, but I highly recommend shopping around. They will have double VIP points, I think, this weekend. I'll put a lego.com affiliate link in the description below. Those will also come with some promos, so you could definitely stack some things and get pretty good prices on stuff. I know Walmart had the ATST Raider over the last week for like $30. That's 40% off. LEGO is not going to give you 40% off. So if you want the best deals, typically those aren't going to be found from LEGO themselves. I know you live in Canada and all my stuff is US centric, but some of the stuff that I say will also apply to Canada. So I will try to keep updating my community tab with, good deals that I see come up for Black Friday and LEGO. And Kenneth says, aside from LEGO, what were some of your other favorite toys as a kid? I think by far, if I pick one toy, it's the lightsabers, right? We had the lightsabers that went all the way into the hilt, and then we had the lightsabers that still had like the clear part sticking out a lot. But we would just have these massive neighborhood-wide lightsaber battles. I think it was also really lucky, like a lot of kids lived around where I grew up, like in the neighborhood down the street and everything. And so we would just play with lightsabers all the time. And, you know, that was probably the single best toy that we had. I mean, we played a lot of other things and airsoft and baseball and stuff. But I think if you boil it down to one toy that was like the favorite, it had to be lightsabers. Just so much use from those things. Christian Pena says, will you be buying any of the LEGO Target collaboration items happening on December 4th? I'm not a colorful guy, but some of those sweaters are looking pretty nice. I agree. There's definitely some stuff there that is pretty interesting. I think there's like hundreds of items, so I certainly won't be collecting it all. But I think the stuff I found myself most drawn to was like the stuffed classic spacemen, so I might buy those. But as far as the clothing goes, some of it's obviously for kids, so that's already out of the running, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like gray and black are like, you know, my favorite colors to wear. I guess a little green for the Celtics, a little dark blue every once in a while, but you know, same deal. Not super colorful, not high on, you know, yellow with green and blue and red all in the same thing. It just, you know, I'm not feeling it. But you know, maybe if I see something that piques my interest, I'll hop on and buy it. But I haven't taken too much of a look at it, other than that I know I really want the classic space stuffed animals. Adam says, what do you think about the leaked Scout Trooper minifigure? And thanks for the rest of the comment. The interesting thing about this is it obviously confirms the Snow Trooper Battle Pack, and it looks great, but I think there's a different slant on it that I have that not a lot of other people would talk to you about, is that way back in the day, and I say way back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, it was 2015, I think there's a lot of roots to why I dislike LEGO, and this is one of them. They literally took my channel away, and I had no idea. Like this was just like a, oh hey, this guy's posting these pictures, just take his channel away. They took my channel away by submitting YouTube copyright strikes because I posted like pictures talking about, you know, LEGO minifigures that leaked, just like this Scout Trooper. I won't show it to you. I'm deathly scared they'll do it again because they've done it before. Nowadays, people are freely posting this on Instagram and, more importantly, YouTube. That's what I post on the most. And there is no repercussions from LEGO. Free to do whatever you'd like. So I find it really interesting that they just don't want to copyright strike people for this anymore. I don't know why. They don't explain why. They never talk to me, even though it seemed kind of important. But, you know, that's cool. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, hey, the Scout Trooper looks pretty nice. I'm excited that we have a slight variation of the Scout Trooper. That Scout Trooper helmet is like one of the coolest helmets that LEGO makes. It's a great dual mold. But yeah, that's my takeaway from it somewhat, is that it's very interesting that people get away with posting this now. So we're going to move on to our next question from Joffrey's Cookhouse. I hope you actually own some type of restaurant called Joffrey's Cookhouse and your mascot is the Joffrey. I know it's not spelled the same Joffrey, but Joffrey the giraffe from Toys R Us, now that they're out of business. Well, they're kind of back, but like you could probably take it anyway. They're not going to care. They're busy trying to figure out how to make money. Anyway, he says, as someone who likes LEGO and wants to make YouTube videos on it, but doesn't necessarily have the budget for it, would it be okay to do reviews on retired sets that I already have? Absolutely, 100,000%. Make videos on, like, the best way, especially for someone without a big budget, much like myself 10 years ago when I got into YouTube, the absolute best way to get into making any type of content in any type of sphere is to start with what you have and work from there. You cannot fall into the toolbox fallacy of, I need to have the $4,000 computer. I need to have the $500 camera. I have to have the $200 microphone, because you don't. We all start from practically nothing. And when you keep that mindset that you have to start at the same place everyone starts, I think it helps you a lot. And really, it's like no one's gonna look down upon you for just making videos with what you have. So start there. If you want this to become something you can make money with, you have to, oh my God. So start from there, build up from there. Success is never guaranteed, but the best way to start, the cheapest way to start for you is definitely to start with things you already own. And it's the same way that most people you're watching now, like myself, like now I'm in this awesome place where I can buy a lot of LEGO sets as soon as they come out. But like, it certainly wasn't always that way. And so like, you have to start somewhere. You don't have to start. I mean, if you were fortunate enough to be able to start where you can buy every LEGO set ever, more power to you. Everyone starts at 0 subscribers, so keep that in mind. But yeah, man, good luck if you do start. I highly encourage anyone that's interested in making any type of online content to start, because it's really fun. It's very fulfilling when you're doing well. The highs are high, the lows are low, but it's a great time. And I'd like to end this episode with a great comment from Scott. He says, no question, just wanted to say thank you for what you do. I'm 37 and your channel and LEGO has really helped me. Watching your videos and putting together sets is like therapy to me, and keep doing your reviews of older sets. I use those to decide if I want to buy an old set or not. The comparison videos are also very helpful. Thank you so much. And for anyone that wants to submit a video submission for Ask MandR 200, make sure you guys send an email submission. I should have said this up front, but try to keep them like under 30 seconds. And you can send it to askmandr200@gmail.com. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, because that's all YouTube wants you to do anyway. If new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.